When the last door of an American home clicks shut, it is not just a building that is abandoned. It becomes a tomb of forgotten lives, a silent witness to dreams that decayed within its walls. Dust swirls in broken windows, and the wind carries whispers of the families who once laughed, fought, and vanished into history. From decaying furniture to graffiti-stained walls, each abandoned house tells a story of decline, desperation, and secrets that were never meant to be uncovered. But what truly happens after the world walks away? Some say the homes become haunted, others that they are prey to darker forces. Walking through neighborhoods dotted with abandoned homes, one cannot ignore the quiet weight that hangs in the air. These houses, once filled with laughter, arguments, and the mundane rituals of daily life, have become voids, hollowed-out reminders of what used to be. Residents who remain nearby speak in hushed tones about the creeping sense of unease that settles over their streets. Children grow up with vacant lots as their playgrounds, learning early that life can be fragile and that permanence is an illusion. Psychologists describe these spaces as haunted by absence, though the haunting is more psychological than spectral, a pervasive feeling that something vital has been lost. Leaving behind only echoes, people who live adjacent to abandoned properties often experience an almost imperceptible shift in perception over time. Even on bright summer days, the neighborhood can feel dimmed, the sun's warmth filtered through layers of neglect and decay. Residents admit that they avoid walking past these structures after dark. The house's empty windows seem to watch, and a breeze slipping through broken glass carries with it the faint scent of rot, decay, and long-forgotten meals. Many speak of sleepless nights, disturbed by the imagined sounds of footsteps, whispers, or muffled cries that seem to emanate from within the walls themselves. It is as if the house retains the memory of its former occupants, projecting their final moments of despair outward into the surrounding streets. Culturally, abandoned homes have an insidious effect. Neighborhoods once vibrant with community events, block parties, and daily greetings now appear fragmented. Front porches sag, lawns turn to weeds, and fences fall inwards. This physical deterioration mirrors the erosion of trust and connection among remaining residents. People stop greeting one another, fearing that any noise or commotion might attract unwanted attention from vandals, squatters, or worse. Psychologists note that abandoned homes act as a subtle social contagion. They normalize neglect and invite a creeping sense of hopelessness. Families who might have stayed are often compelled to leave, creating a feedback loop of decline. Schools and community centers feel the impact as well. Children who live near abandoned homes often exhibit heightened anxiety, a reluctance to engage with peers, and a sense of vulnerability. The empty houses become unintended monuments to failure, shaping young minds with the silent message that their community is in retreat. Studies have even shown that proximity to vacant, decaying structures correlates with higher rates of juvenile delinquency, theft, and antisocial behavior. The psychological imprint of the abandoned space lingers long after the structure itself has fallen into rubble or been boarded up. Local businesses cannot escape the influence of these neglected homes either. Mom-and-pop stores shutter as foot traffic dwindles, replaced by the occasional trespasser seeking shelter or mischief. The economic decline feeds the sense that the neighborhood is cursed, creating a cultural narrative steeped in fear, rumor, and speculation. Stories emerge of families who vanished quietly, of suspicious deaths whose causes were never fully explained, and of trespassers who entered abandoned homes only to disappear for a night or longer, leaving the community to wonder whether the house itself had somehow claimed them. The psychological and cultural imprint of these vacant houses does not merely affect the people who live near them. It extends into the consciousness of the entire town. Artists, historians, and documentarians are drawn to these spaces, seeking to capture their eerie beauty, yet they too feel the weight of absence pressing down. The houses almost demand that their stories be told, though not always in ways that are comfortable or safe. They carry lessons about human fragility, about the subtle ways that neglect spreads, and about the quiet, pervasive power of loss. In towns across America, the remnants of once thriving neighborhoods tell stories of sudden collapse, of economic dreams crumbling like the plaster on their walls. Factories that once roared with industry now stand silent, their smokestacks jagged silhouettes against gray skies. Streets that once hummed with life are now empty, broken asphalt giving way to weeds that push relentlessly through the cracks. Abandoned homes line these avenues like ghostly sentinels, their paint blistered, roofs sagging, windows either shattered or boarded, as if the houses themselves are curling inward in despair. Economic collapse does not arrive in a single moment. It creeps, slow and methodical, eroding the foundations of communities until the neighborhood itself becomes a relic. For many residents, the decline begins quietly. Businesses close one by one, jobs vanish, and property values plummet. Families that had called a neighborhood home for generations suddenly find themselves trapped between loyalty and survival. Some move on, seeking employment and stability elsewhere, leaving behind homes that quickly fall into neglect. Others cannot afford to leave, forced to endure the creeping deterioration around them. They watch as their neighbors disappear, as streets that once rang with children's laughter become littered with broken glass and the detritus of those who fled in haste. The urban fabric unravels quietly, each shuttered window an empty lot, a marker of a community losing its pulse. As neighborhoods decay, the social consequences are stark and haunting. Crime often follows vacancy, a dark twin to economic collapse. Abandoned homes become magnets for trespassers, squatters, and those seeking shelter from the law. Fires, whether accidental or intentional, consume wooden frames left unmaintained. Vandals carve their names into walls and furniture, leaving cryptic symbols or messages that hint at mischief or menace. Locals whisper of corners where shadows move too deliberately, of graffiti that seems almost ritualistic in nature. The collapse of industry, coupled with the exodus of families, creates an invisible boundary between those who remain and the abandoned. A liminal space where fear and opportunity collide. Urban decay also carries a profound psychological toll. Residents report feelings of isolation and helplessness, watching their neighborhoods transform into open-air mausoleums. The decay is not only external. It gnaws at the spirit, fostering resentment, anxiety, and despair. Community bonds weaken as shared spaces vanish, and trust becomes a fragile commodity. Children growing up in these neighborhoods internalize the desolation, learning early that the world is precarious, that the structures meant to protect and nurture can crumble, and that safety is fleeting. For them, the abandoned houses are silent teachers, offering lessons in vulnerability and the impermanence of stability. Economic collapse is rarely just a financial event. It carries with it moral and cultural decay. Local governments, often strapped for resources, struggle to maintain streets, lighting, and emergency services. The social safety net frays, leaving those who cannot leave to fend for themselves amid the ruins. Entire blocks fall under the weight of neglect, and with every empty house, the sense of communal identity diminishes. A neighborhood once proud and self-sustaining becomes a patchwork of reminders of loss, where dreams are frozen in midair, and ambition is swallowed by the shadows of vacancy. Nature begins to reclaim the space, relentless and indifferent. Trees push through foundations, vines snake up walls, and wildlife burrows into forgotten attics. Even the streets themselves are overtaken, cracks spreading like veins across the ground. The infrastructure of human habitation failing as surely as the economy that once sustained it. The houses, empty and decaying, are monuments not only to past prosperity, but also to the fragility of civilization in the face of economic collapse. Their silence is deafening, their emptiness a stark record of what happens when the lifeblood of a community dries up, leaving behind only walls, memories, and the whisper of what once was. Abandoned homes hold a magnetic pull over the curious and the desperate alike. For some, it is a thrill, a trespass into forbidden territory where every step creaks with the weight of forgotten lives. For others, it is necessity, a place to seek shelter when the world offers no welcome. In cities like Detroit and Gary, families who have nowhere else to go slip quietly through shattered doors, claiming rooms once adorned with furniture, photos, and the echoes of domestic life. Squatters leave behind signs of existence, a worn mattress, a kettle on a dusty stove, personal belongings strewn across floors, but even in survival, the house exerts its quiet dominion, reminding intruders that they are merely temporary tenants in a space long abandoned by those who once called it home. Trespassers who venture in for thrills often speak of the feeling that the house is alive. They describe sudden chills in airless rooms, shadows that flicker at the edge of vision, and footsteps that seem to echo their own. Some come seeking adventure, others chasing legends of crime or tragedy that linger in urban myth. A young man in Pennsylvania recounts exploring a row of derelict houses with his friends, drawn by stories of a murder that had been hushed up decades earlier. They found a room filled with decaying children's toys, and on the wall, a hand-drawn figure that seemed to watch them as they moved. One of them swears he saw the figure shift its position when no one else was looking. Tales like these circulate quietly online, whispered among those who thrive on the danger of proximity to the past. Yet not all who enter abandoned homes are thrill seekers. Some are drawn for illicit purposes. Drug users and dealers often adopt these properties as makeshift hideouts, leaving behind syringes, burned furniture, and the faint, acrid stench of chemicals. Law enforcement officers report that abandoned houses are hotbeds for illegal activity because the structures provide anonymity, cover, and a perceived immunity from consequence. In many instances, these spaces become sites of conflict territories marked with graffiti, arguments escalating into violence, or even bodies left undiscovered until weeks later. The empty houses bear witness to acts that are never meant to be exposed, chronicling the darkest sides of human desperation and lawlessness. Ghost stories and local legends often intertwine with these real dangers, blurring the line between psychological fear and tangible threat. Neighborhoods surrounding abandoned homes develop reputations that deter families and encourage further vacancy. Residents tell of strange noises, of figures glimpsed in upper windows, and of fleeting shadows darting through rooms where sunlight never reaches. Some insist that the structures themselves have become predators, feeding on the energy of those who dare enter, whether for thrill, necessity, or mischief. These narratives, while sensational, carry kernels of truth. The abandoned house is rarely neutral. Its empty walls have absorbed every argument, every act of care, every violent incident that occurred within, leaving an invisible residue that shapes behavior and perception. Over time, the presence of trespassers and squatters further accelerates the decay of these homes. Broken doors and windows, graffiti, and discarded items signal vulnerability, inviting more intrusion. In some cases, the very act of occupation preserves the house temporarily, as residents attempt to repair a leaky roof or clean a flooded basement. But even these attempts are often insufficient against years of neglect. Abandoned homes, therefore, become arenas of human drama, a crossroads where curiosity, survival, and criminality converge. Law enforcement officers, historians, and sociologists alike note that these interactions between humans and abandoned structures form an unofficial archive of modern life. The stories of trespassers and squatters reveal a fragile society, one where desperation and fascination meet in silent hallways. Each mark on a wall, each whispered legend, and each act of survival adds another layer to the house's narrative, ensuring that the structure is never truly empty, but alive with memory, fear, and the consequences of human choices. Abandoned homes are not frozen in time. They are caught in a slow, relentless metamorphosis, where human absence invites nature to assert its quiet dominion. Inside these hushed spaces, wallpaper peels like sunburned skin, revealing layers of paint and paper that tell the story of generations. Floors sag under the weight of decades, and ceilings crumble, scattering plaster across rooms where dust has gathered into thick, soft carpets. The air is heavy with the scent of mold, rot, and the faint sweetness of decaying wood. Light filtering through broken windows casts elongated shadows across the remnants of furniture, giving ordinary objects an uncanny, almost predatory presence. Chairs tilt precariously, tables are encrusted with the residue of long-forgotten meals, and photographs, yellowed and curling, stare blankly from walls as if silently accusing the world of having abandoned them. Outside, nature does not wait. Ivy crawls across walls, tearing through brick and mortar, slowly transforming architecture into living sculpture. Trees sprout through foundations, their roots undermining floors and splitting walls, and birds nest in chimneys once used to carry warmth to human families. Even the streets surrounding these homes surrender to decay. Asphalt cracks, weeds push through in stubborn lines, and potholes deepen with the passage of rain and frost. The entire neighborhood becomes a stage where the natural world performs a quiet, methodical reclamation of what humanity has forsaken. Animals move freely through spaces that were once rigidly ordered, claiming rooms, attics, and basements as territory, leaving behind traces of their occupation, drop-ins, feathers, nests, and scratch marks that hint at lives now entwined with the house's slow collapse. Objects within these homes tell stories of abandonment in ways that are both subtle and disturbing. Books decay, pages curling, inks running into water stains. Dishes chip and discolor, textiles fray, and toys disintegrate into unrecognizable shapes. Sometimes a single item remains relatively intact: a photograph, a locket, a handwritten note seemingly preserved by chance, yet drawing attention to everything that has deteriorated around it. These vestiges are evidence of life abruptly halted, frozen in a moment before the decay took over, their silence more haunting than any visible damage. Architecture itself becomes grotesque over time. Roofs sag or cave entirely, floors tilt, and walls bow inward. Staircases that once carried children to bedrooms twist into dangerous angles, and banisters splinter under the slightest touch. Windows, long unwashed, distort the sunlight, turning once clear views into fractured mosaics of shadow and light. Sometimes, the structural collapse exposes hidden areas, cellars filled with debris, attics choked with insulation, and the remnants of domestic life, secret compartments long forgotten. Each collapse is both violent and quiet, a surrender to time and the elements that gradually strips the home of its human identity. The interplay between decay and nature's reclamation carries a profound, almost spectral atmosphere. A home abandoned for 10 years is different from one left untouched for 50. Moss carpets the floor, rainwater collects in basements, forming shallow pools that reflect broken ceilings like dark mirrors, and small animals move silently among the ruins, lending a strange vitality to what is otherwise lifeless. The transformation is hypnotic, a slow-motion narrative of impermanence and mortality. Even the air seems charged with memory, as if the house itself remembers the footsteps, laughter, and arguments that once filled its halls. Those who explore these spaces often report a feeling that the house is evolving around them, adjusting to their presence. A floorboard might groan under a step not because it is weak, but because the house resists intrusion, reminding visitors that decay is not neutral, it is alive, deliberate, and unyielding. Every crack, every fallen beam, every vine that forces its way through a wall is a testament to the inexorable power of entropy in nature. A silent narrative that tells of human absence and the unstoppable passage of time. Some abandoned homes are not empty simply because people left. They are empty because of the darkness that once transpired within their walls. In neighborhoods long forsaken by prosperity, There are houses whose silence is deafening, carrying the weight of unspeakable acts. Detectives and historians who delve into these forgotten properties often discover that crime leaves an imprint as permanent as architecture. One house in upstate New York, abandoned since the early 1970s, was the scene of a gruesome double homicide that went unresolved for decades. The victims were a young couple, their lives snuffed out in a frenzy of violence that neighbors described as sudden, terrifying, and inexplicable. The house remained boarded up, yet locals claim they could still hear muffled arguments when the wind passed through broken windows, as if the walls themselves were whispering the night's horrors. In Detroit, a row of abandoned row houses bears the legacy of arson, drug-related killings, and mysterious disappearances. Police files list them as cold cases, some of which were quietly closed without resolution. Locals speak of bodies found weeks after they had perished, discovered in attics or behind false walls, and of evidence tampered with or removed before investigators could fully document it. These homes seem to attract the kinds of tragedies that are too complex, too dark, or too inconvenient for the world to fully acknowledge. For those who live nearby, even the mere presence of these structures is a reminder that violence and misfortune can linger long after the perpetrators have vanished. Abandoned homes also serve as incubators for criminal behavior. Squatters and trespassers are not always innocent or curious. They sometimes stumble upon spaces where illicit activity has occurred and feel compelled to continue it. In a house in a forgotten industrial district of Pennsylvania, investigators found traces of ritualistic activity dating back decades. Candles melted into the floorboards, symbols etched into walls, and remnants of human remains hinted at a history of cult-like behavior. The house, long left to decay, became a nexus of fear and fascination, drawing thrill seekers and those hoping to exploit its sinister reputation. Each new occupant, aware or unaware of the house's past, contributed to a layered narrative of criminality and danger. Even when the crimes are less sensational, the evidence of human wrongdoing is deeply unsettling. Forgotten homes often contain stolen goods, weapons, and personal belongings that tell fragmented stories of robbery, assault, and domestic abuse. Diaries and letters discovered in these decayed spaces reveal the desperation of families trying to escape abusive circumstances or financial ruin. In some cases, the very act of abandoning a home is itself a crime. Unpaid taxes, fraudulent property transfers, or concealed illegal activity leave these houses as monuments to systemic failure as much as individual wrongdoing. Local communities develop their own dark folklore around these properties. Legends circulate about ghosts of murdered tenants who roam the hallways, or of previous owners returning to exact vengeance on those who dare enter. Even law enforcement officers admit that the psychological weight of investigating crimes in long-abandoned houses is profound. Each creaking floorboard, each flickering shadow, each overturned object is a reminder that the house has absorbed not just human presence, but human violence, and that it retains memory in ways impossible to quantify. The combination of physical decay and violent history creates an almost supernatural aura around certain abandoned homes. Walking into these structures, visitors report a sense of being watched, a premonition of danger, or a compulsion to leave before uncovering more than they intended. The crimes that occurred within these walls are not just stories. They are embedded into the architecture itself, shaping the way the houses respond to the world outside. Even decades later, the memory of those acts continues to influence behavior, decisions, and perceptions of the communities around them. The fate of abandoned homes is often dictated as much by legislation or the absence of it as by the forces of nature or human neglect. Across America, countless neighborhoods have been shaped by policies that incentivize flight, neglect, or redevelopment delays. In the Rust Belt, for instance, cities once buoyed by industry failed to implement protections for homeowners as factories shuttered and jobs evaporated. Tax codes and zoning laws sometimes made it more profitable to leave a house vacant than to maintain it, while bureaucratic red tape stalled any attempts to rehabilitate the property. As a result, entire blocks fell into decay, caught in a limbo where the law neither protected nor punished, allowing neglect to fester into ruin. Some policies, ostensibly well-intentioned, inadvertently accelerated abandonment. Housing programs designed to revitalize neighborhoods occasionally displaced longtime residents, offering subsidies that encouraged relocation but providing no follow-up or enforcement to ensure community cohesion. Similarly, the foreclosure crisis of the early 2000s created a wave of abandoned properties, leaving homes empty for years while banks, overwhelmed by volume, allowed the structures to deteriorate. Inspections were infrequent, maintenance deferred, and liabilities ignored, transforming financial instruments into ghostly edifices that haunted entire districts. Urban planning and redevelopment initiatives often overlooked the cultural and social costs of these abandoned spaces. In cities like Baltimore and Cleveland, demolition programs cleared some blocks entirely, leaving gaping lots and erasing not just buildings but memories, histories, and community networks. While the government touted progress and safety, residents felt a profound disconnection from the places they once called home. When a house is left to rot because no policy compels repair, or when demolition occurs without preservation, the result is the same: neighborhoods fractured, human stories extinguished, and a landscape littered with the physical reminders of policy failures. Law enforcement and public safety agencies are also constrained by governmental structures. Police departments may recognize abandoned houses as hubs of criminal activity, yet limited budgets, understaffing, and jurisdictional disputes often prevent consistent monitoring. Fire departments respond to blazes that erupt in neglected homes, but preventative measures like boarding broken windows, securing structures, or enforcing building codes are sporadic. The result is a patchwork of oversight where abandoned homes are left to the mercy of chance, crime, and decay. Local governments, too, struggle with liability. If a house collapses or someone is injured on property, the municipality may be blamed. Yet enforcing compliance on long-vacant or bank-owned properties is legally complex. This legal gray area often protects absentee owners while leaving neighborhoods vulnerable. Attempts at redevelopment or rehabilitation can be slowed by tangled ownership records, back taxes, or disputes over historical preservation status. Each delay, each unresolved paperwork issue, becomes another layer of neglect, allowing the house to decay further while human oversight fades into bureaucracy. In some instances, government inaction is compounded by public perception. Citizens assume that abandoned homes are someone else's responsibility, the bank, the city, the state, when in reality, without coordinated policy intervention, no one takes ownership. Communities grow cynical, and a sense of helplessness settles in. Stories circulate of abandoned houses where fire, vandalism, or even more sinister events occur, yet authorities are constrained by law, funding, or procedure from intervening effectively. The absence of proactive measures creates a vacuum where neglect becomes normalized. Crime flourishes, and the cycle of abandonment perpetuates itself. At the intersection of law, economics, and urban development, abandoned homes reflect both systemic failure and human vulnerability. Government policies or their absence dictate whether a house decays unnoticed, is rehabilitated, or is demolished, and these decisions ripple outward, affecting entire neighborhoods. Every unmaintained roof, boarded-up window, or unpaid tax is a testament to the influence of governance on the physical and social landscape. In this way, bureaucracy, legislation, and neglect combine to shape the lives of those who remain nearby, leaving behind a legacy written in broken windows, sagging porches, and the silent walls of abandoned homes. Abandoned homes are more than decaying structures. They are archives of human ambition, repositories of secrets, and monuments to dreams that never fully materialized. Each peeling wallpaper, each cracked window pane, and each collapsed floorboard is a page in a story written by lives now absent. In neighborhoods across the country, these houses stand as silent witnesses to the arc of human experience, celebration and despair, wealth and poverty, hope and failure. They chronicle the rhythms of daily life, the intimate moments of family, and the abrupt, sometimes violent interruptions that led to their desertion. For those who linger near these structures, the presence of memory is palpable, almost tactile, pressing on the senses like a weight that refuses to dissipate. In one Midwestern town, a row of abandoned houses tells a story of industrial rise and fall. Workers once lived here, their lives intertwined with the rhythm of the factories that employed them. Kitchens smelled of fresh bread and coffee. Children ran through hallways echoing with laughter. Yet as the factories closed, families left in waves, leaving behind homes brimming with artifacts of daily life. A broken toy on a dusty floor, a half-finished knitting project, a family photograph yellowed with age. All these fragments preserve the vitality of lives abruptly interrupted. Walking through these empty halls, one feels a profound intimacy with strangers who disappeared decades ago. A connection forged not through words, but through the lingering traces of their existence. Secrets, too, are etched into these structures. Some homes conceal evidence of crime, letters describing abuse, photographs hinting at infidelity, or locked closets that hide objects no one ever wanted discovered. Investigators occasionally stumble across hidden compartments, safes or journals that reveal desperate plans, financial ruin, or silent suffering. Each item left behind tells a story not just of what occurred within those walls, but of what was hidden, ignored, or silenced. The house itself seems to preserve these secrets, maintaining a quiet, almost sentient vigilance, resisting exposure even as it decays around them. Abandoned homes also reveal societal ambitions and failures. Lavish homes left to crumble beside modest cottages illustrate economic inequality frozen in time. They bear witness to the consequences of speculation, overextension, or political neglect. Towns that once flourished now host streets of vacancy, where ambition collided with circumstance, leaving only physical reminders of dreams that could not survive the pressures of time, policy, or economics. Communities are forced to reckon with these reminders, confronting the stark contrast between past promise and present ruin. Even in their decay, these homes exert influence over memory and imagination. Artists and writers enter these spaces to capture their atmosphere, historians to document their stories, and local children to weave legends around them. They become settings for ghost stories, true crime speculation, and whispered tales of past tragedies. The haunting legacy is both literal and metaphorical. The homes are haunted by absence, by the people who lived and struggled there, and by the choices that led to their desertion. Every crack in a wall, every sagging roof, every door hanging crookedly on its hinges is a record of time, neglect, and human vulnerability. Neighbors often feel the weight of this legacy acutely. They sense that the house remembers not only its occupants, but also the street it inhabits. Children are warned not to play too close. Teens tell stories of strange sounds, and adults pass by quickly, unwilling to linger. Even those with no connection to the past feel the lingering presence of ambition, loss, and secrecy, as if the homes themselves are quietly judging the living. Through all of this, abandoned homes function as silent historians. They document what human memory often forgets: the small joys, the quiet tragedies, the unseen moments of desperation and courage. Their walls, floors, and ceilings preserve the traces of human life, recording the arc of society, one decaying room at a time. They are at once terrifying and intimate, monstrous and tender, offering a dark reflection of the human story, preserved in brick, timber, and dust. Asterisk as the sun dips behind the skeletal outlines of forgotten streets, and the wind whispers through broken windows. You may find yourself wondering what truly lingers in these abandoned homes. Are they mere structures, decaying under the weight of time? Or are they silent witnesses to human ambition, secrets, and tragedy, waiting for someone to listen? Tonight, you've walked through hallways where laughter once echoed and bedrooms where whispers of fear and loss still seem to hang in the air. These houses do not forget, and neither should we. If the shadows of their stories linger with you, let us continue this journey together. Subscribe now and join a community that dares to confront the hidden corners of history, the mysteries left unsolved, and the secrets we cannot quite explain. Share your thoughts in the comments. What haunted you the most? Which house, which story, or which lost memory refuses to let go? Every episode is a doorway into the unknown, a glimpse of the lives that vanished while the world looked away. Step closer, linger in the silence, and prepare for the next story that history tried to hide. There are more secrets waiting just beyond the next doorstep, and you won't want to miss a single one.